This is E&P Reports, a vodcast from editor and publisher. Since 1884, the authoritative voice of news publishing. And this episode sponsored by IQ Audience Plus by Town News. Consumer revenue has never been more important. Digital leaders at media organizations worldwide understand the need to accelerate its growth now. Plus, traditional one-size-fits-all paywalls aren't the answer. They're blunt instruments that treat all visitors the same way. IQ Audience Plus is a smart, dynamic metering solution that empowers media companies to maximize revenue by identifying key audiences, seeding engagement, and growing membership and subscriptions. Supercharge your consumer revenue, grow engagement, and bolster your advertising income now with IQ Audience Plus. Visit townnews.com EP today to learn more. And hi, warm welcome once again. Mike Blinder, publisher of E&P. Quick housekeeping. If you are listening to us on your favorite podcast channel, Spotify, Apple, Google, Alexa, what have you, please, by all means, follow us. Watching on our YouTube channel, smash the button right below that says subscribe, hit the bell to the right. You'll get an update each and every time we upload a new episode of E&P Reports, our weekly vodcast that looks at the news publishing industry. A good friend of mine, and full disclosure, is Kurt Jackson. Kurt, come on in and join us, please. Kurt is an industry veteran. Kurt, you are now the owner of Software Consulting Services. Am I correct, sir? And you were there for a very, very short time. Am I right? I mean, how many? 2 months was it again before you bought the business?
Yeah. No, I started at SCS in all the way back in 1993.
I know.
When I came over from a company called INSI, which was an offshoot of Journal Register, which was an offshoot of Ingersoll Publications, way back in the fun days, and joined SCS in 1993 when Richard Cichellii, the owner of the company and founder, had wanted to put on the market a circulation system, and I had background in circulation.
Which is why we want to have a talk today with you, because you've been in this industry embedded, coming out. First of all, for full disclosure, if you say Journal Register in that era, that means you're a suburban Philadelphia boy like me, right? Haverford High School class of 75.
I am. I was born and grew up in Westchester, Pennsylvania.
Oh, right down Westchester Pike. Here I am, Havertown. You know where I am. Where I was born and I'm in Tampa now. Did you ever? The big question is then: did you see the Mayor of Easttown yet, the HBO series, or not? Because I did. Yes. Watch the trailer. I know we're boring the hell out of our audience now, but the trailer on YouTube. Yeah. How did all these British actors learn the suburban Philly accent is beyond me. Which I hear. Well,
the word water gives it away, you know?
Yeah, that's it. Funny. My last name is Blinder, and my father's assistant was Linda, and he kept calling her Linder. So I always thought my name was Linda. No, go ahead. I'm sorry, sir. But you're a suburban Philly boy. You're located out there. You know a cheesesteak and a hoagie when it's handed to you.
I do. And interestingly, I started in the newspaper business as a paper boy, as many of us did, with the Philadelphia Bulletin, which is no longer around, but it was around, as you know, at the time. And I delivered the Philadelphia Bulletin, and I was always jealous of the kid who delivered the Daily Local in my neighborhood, because he had a much smaller paper, and they didn't have a Sunday paper at the time. So I had to pester my poor mother to get up and drive me around to deliver these papers that weighed a ton.
Oh, my word. Well, anyway, let's first have a little somber note. You took over SCS from the existing owner that you worked for decades, Richard Cichellii. Recently, we learned of his passing, and industry veteran.
Go ahead. I'd worked here for 27 or 28 years, and in the last 4 or 5 years, Richard and Martha and I talked a lot about transition and what might happen, and how that might happen. Regrettably, a year ago, Richard had a stroke, and then a few months after that, Martha had mentioned that we should go ahead and start the transition plan And on September 1st, I officially purchased the company. I purchased their membership in the company, 100% of their membership. And regrettably, last night, Martha let me know that Richard had passed away. So great industry leader, incredible intellect for those of you that, and many of our folks that have had the chance to work with him. And I think in the context of his persona, cantankerous would probably be Richard's best description, as that everybody seems to have a Richard Cichellii story from somewhere in the past.
Well, he was a visionary too, and how he saw the need to innovate in order to maintain our audience, correct? I mean, even
absolutely. And his role was, he loved to play the role of inventor here at SCS.
Right.
And interestingly, Layout 80, which was the first version of Layout, came over from the ANPA with Richard in 1983. And that's where it started, and that's where Layout started. And our first customer, interestingly, was one of the first ones was Lancaster, Pennsylvania, in 1984, and they're still our customer.
Yeah, and that's a wonderful family-owned operation there.
It is a great organization.
Great organization. Yep. I visited there many times working for them as a consultant. I love the fact that they have their own restaurant club right there next to the, and even in the window of their building, that's where they do their videos. It's just
the press room. Yeah,
the press. It's an amazing operation. Which brings us down to a discussion I wanted to have with you. You and I go way back. I mean, we've been in this industry for many years. I came up through the sales side, 20 years as a revenue consultant. You, of course, on the digital side, the audience. I mean, you're a nerd like me in a way. I sold computers at Radio Shack in the 70s. So I always had a computer next to me in some way, shape, form, or size since my youth.
Right.
But so let's put the first thing on the table. So newspapers are dead, right? I mean, when I say the word newspaper, I define that, and let me just preamble this. I define that as an entity that has credible journalism, correct? I mean, sourced journalism that has to find an audience for it and monetize it.
Right.
Sometimes we interchange the words here at E&P now, news publisher, because the word paper implies it has to be on a press.
Right.
I live in Tampa, Florida. I've said this many times on this platform. My hometown paper, similar to Philadelphia, is two different ones that merged, is now the Tampa Bay Times, published by the Poynter Institute, but only goes to press twice a week.
Yeah.
But still has a replica version each and every day.
Right.
Where do you see the industry today? Are we dead?
So this drives me crazy, because I know from the work we've done over the years and the way we work with our customers, I know what the revenue picture is. And I remember what the revenue picture was when I actually ended up working at the Daily Local News, and then working for Ingersoll, and newspapers had these incredibly rich margins.
Yes.
And then the change happened in 2000, change happened in 2010, and slowly that's been eroding away. But I agree with you that what's important is the journalism and the vetting of the stories. So we somehow know when we pick up a paper or read it online or look at a website, we're probably looking at something that has a good bit of truth to it. And that's converse to much of the other information we read and look at on the internet. So I don't look at newspapers as dead. I don't look at print as dead. I think that print's going to be around a long time. And we were both just at the Colorado Springs conference, and you had a luncheon where, if you remember, I think it was PJ Browning was up on the stage.
She was one of my panelists, right?
She was a panelist, and you were asking some questions of the audience, and one of them was, should we be printing less frequent? And there were one or two people that said maybe, but she very loud and resounding stood up and said, no, we're going to print every day. We're going to keep printing every day. And she understands that the importance of what I think is that the print product is your brand in the market, and your connection to growth is in the community. So you as a paper and a publisher have to be tied to the community, and your growth comes out of that. And there are plenty of people that still read, buy, and purchase the print product. And as I think Walter Hussman found out, when he finally started pushing more digital on digital, what did people like? They liked the replica of the paper more than they actually liked the website.
Well, see, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, especially in a tablet world where people, I mean, I proudly take our magazine seriously. We print every month a print product. Right. And we take a lot of time on that now. I mean, we are focused on making it the most beautiful, where we reject advertisers. I mean, if the we don't reject the advertiser, we reject the content of the ad if it's not meeting our standards. And then that replica version we proudly put out there is very, very popular. People flip the pages, but it doesn't suck. You have an ad in my magazine, full disclosure, that if your hyperlink in there, an email address and phone number become a hyperlink for people to click to call. What's wrong with that? Exactly. I mean, we're amplifying it. So I agree with you, but that doesn't mean that's my only channel. I mean, I take the digital very, very seriously. We break many stories online. This platform alone is another extension of the brand. I look at print as another vehicle. Does that make sense? Another channel.
It does. And I'm going to reach over here for a second. And this isn't by accident. I have your products right here on the desk. Okay. So, and I reference back to them from time to time. But the reality is that it is multi-channel. But let's not kid ourselves that print is still the largest chunk of that channel. And going digital means different things to different people. But I personally don't see an environment where we end up with everybody online trying to live off of digital ads. I think that it's going to go a slightly different direction, where we're going to have to find ways to pay for content that don't involve throwing ads up in front of everybody's face on a website.
Well, they're okay. So let's get into the history, because you and I have been around this industry. I came in obliquely through radio and television as a digital leader. You came in on the software side because of your background at Journal Register, being a pioneer on the on becoming more electronic. I mean, we both entered an industry, and you said what I remember when my first paper that I entered was the Portland, Maine Press Herald. They took me away from a big radio group I was managing and brought me in to start their first online newspaper. We were one of the first in the country. Walked into the classified department. It was massive. Hundreds of people there were on the phones, and there was these big charts on the wall or electronic thing talking about hang time. Hang up and get the next call. Hang up and get the next call. It was like, And I'm going to say this out loud and proud. I had to interact with a sales department because I was coming in to teach them how to sell digital. And that sales department was the laziest group of people I ever met. There was so much demand for their product. Do you understand? That they were nothing more than teaching people what a column inch was and sign the contract. And we treated our classified advertisers because we held them hostage, right? If you didn't have the home in the paper, the seller yelled at you. So we were the necessary evil to the real estate. I could go on and on. We basically we were fat and lazy. That was I'll say that loud and proud, because we may have been one of, remember my first gig nationally, you remember Ad One, our mission was, I was sent out in the field to try to get everybody to aggregate classifieds. Billy Morris was president of the NAA, if you remember, screaming, we got the ads, we have the content, we should start. There should never have been a Craigslist. You and I both know that. There should never but it was like herding cats, right? So that was the first part of the perfect storm. Okay, that we adapted, in my opinion, tell me if I'm wrong, we adapted well on the editorial side. We were the first to publish content online. Now, whether or not we should have locked that content down instantly is another debate, right? We started giving it away. Okay, I'll shut up. You think we should never have done that, right?
I have a couple of different tales of three cities here.
Okay.
First is somewhere early on, and I can't remember what year I was out there, but it must have been in the late 90s, I think. San Francisco Chronicle was a customer of ours.
I worked with them as well.
And I was out there, and they were talking to me about, it was Dan Scheibel. I don't know if you know Dan Scheibel. I
know Dan. The corner of filth in Maine. Remember that's what we used to call it.
So Dan's talking to me, and some of the other guys are mentioning that this thing Craigslist is starting to crawl up their back a little bit. And I happened to actually go out and take a walk, and I ended up going right past the front of that building. And it was just a house that they were all working out of in Craigslist. And even though the founder of Craigslist walks around and tells people, I didn't destroy classifieds and newspapers. I'm sorry, he destroyed classifieds and newspapers. But I will say, you have to qualify that by saying, if it wasn't him, someone would have probably done it anyway. Because I always told everybody, when are newspapers in trouble? When someone can deliver the message with less cost and more frequency. And that's what happened with Craigslist.
Precisely.
So gone, classifieds are gone. Now,
well,
part two is, so we're all starting to build websites, and I play in HTML, and I think we built the first SCS website in like 97 or 98.
Right.
I was so proud of myself for this thing that looked horrible. But either way, newspapers are doing the same thing. And the first mistake, number one, is they somehow believed that this transition was going to happen fast, and they start giving away content online. I've never been a giveaway content online person. If you're a free paper, it probably makes sense. If you're paid, people should pay for your content. Otherwise, what's the value of what you're creating? I perfectly accept I could be all wrong with this, but we had customers who were giving away everything online, and still to this day do, and then turning around and complaining about this dramatic drop in circulation. And then right here in Pennsylvania, in Bloomsburg, we had Brandon Irely. If you know the Ireleys and know Brandon, they never opened up their content to the for free on the front end of their website. Up until like 4 years ago, it was, here's the locations of where you can buy our paper. So what's the lesson in that? What's the shock? Of all the people I know and of all the newspapers we work with, my bet is that they've had the smallest drop in actual paid circulation of any of the customers we deal with.
Well,
because you have to buy the paper to get the news.
Well, and then there's always the debate, but the youth does not want to pay for content. There was the battle between radio, television, and print. I get all that. I mean, but then that's just one part of the perfect storm. Add the second part of the perfect storm, which is the journalist not getting compensated for the content that gets exploited by big tech, Facebook and Google.
Okay.
There's the problem as well, because remember, every song that's played on the radio or over Spotify or everywhere still compensates a composer, right? I mean, that's
okay.
Licensing of music's been going on for over 100 years, but how come the journalism now is free that way?
So 4 or 5 years ago, I was at one of these conferences, and I was sitting with either the owner or publisher, some paper from Arizona. It might have been Santa Fe. And we're talking about this topic. And I said, why are you guys allowing, meaning collectively publishers, why do you allow all of your content to be scraped and exploited and get nothing for it? How do you let that happen? I said, why isn't somebody suing? And she said, because we're all afraid to. And she said, why don't you do it? And I said, I can't do it. I said, I just hate it. I don't own a paper. Well, I said, but this is where it came from. And you have to go all the way back to the beginning of Facebook, and what happens in all of the social media is that they're mining and acquiring content for no cost. So imagine you're a manufacturer and you could get your biggest raw material for no cost. That's what they're doing, and they continue to do. The Europeans started cracking down on it. There's a little bit of cracking down on it over in Asia as well, and in Australia, where they finally cut a deal to start paying. But
and France, there's two countries now
they should absolutely be paying for this content.
So there's our second part of the perfect storm. There's a third front that has come in, which is hedge funds that have come in and taken over. Okay, now let's get into this. They take over a newspaper group. They're taking over different types of newspapers. Not all newspapers are created equal, are they? They're all different. I mean, a big daily is different than a suburban weekly, correct? I mean, this is
the models for, and this is another, print is dead and newspapers are dying. And this is another thing that drives me crazy, is that people, when they talk about newspapers, think of the New York Times or the Washington Post. And what they don't realize is that 90% of them don't look like that in any way, shape, or form. All the rest can be broken up into two groups, ones that are owned by large groups and ones that are independent.
Right.
And there are folks out there that are doing great things at the independent and small and privately owned group level that I consider the pioneers for trying to figure out how to keep this moving forward and keep the journalism, the professional journalism aspect of their product alive. The hedge funds, we've gone this circle. When I was with Ingersoll, he probably was one of the first people to start the hedge fund movement, because if you remember, Ralph Ingersoll's financier was Michael Milken, right?
Right. Yes.
So it's junk bonds that start purchasing and built that entire organization that eventually collapses in the context of the financing, and the bonds collapse and he ends up leaving. I don't see that happening today, but the venture capitalists that purchase the large chains and purchase the newspapers, we can't pretend that they're not what they are. They're there to maximize the profit. So they're going to do that one way or another. But then I believe it's short-sighted.
But there's some good news out of that, because now Gannett is kicking back the weeklies and allowing entrepreneurs, local people who see the value of. Okay, so you said it up front. Yes, the massive, unbelievable margins of yesteryear are gone, correct?
Right.
But if I run a weekly with a good journalistic team that's young and innovative, I might be able to. I know some operators, you know them too, doing 15%, 17%.
You absolutely can make good money. And, you're mentioning, we're working with him, and I know you interviewed Jeremy from Cherry Road. Yeah. And I mean, come on, let's face it. What better than a tech person who knows how to automate and understands digital to start purchasing community newspapers. And Jeremy will tell you flat out and make it perfectly clear that his goal is to be able to plow the extra money back into the journalism and get more reporters out on the street.
He'll still make a nice profit. Papers. It won't be the 50% margins of yesterday.
He'll still make money.
Yeah, there's money there. It's just you got to stop thinking of 50% margins, because of all the insert business, which is gone, and get back into the game. But it can be a very profitable environment that can. I mean, Delta would kill for 15% margin. So would Walmart.
They would. Those days are gone. But
they're gone.
But you and I do both know a lot of these people and organizations, like when you look at Paxton, when you look at Cameron Nutting and the Ogden Group, when you look at Brian Jarvis out in West Virginia,
right.
Again, Brandon Irely, PJ, Brad Waters up in Rome, New York, and the fact that on the large side, fortunately, the LA Times and San Diego were purchased away from Tribune and are basically independent newspaper groups now as well. So trying to find the best way forward.
We're running short on time, and I'm loving this. Two old guys just chatting away.
Oh.
But okay, so when is a brand dead? This is what I keep asking people. Like I always ask that if people have been around, because let's take a look at the Denver Post now. You got Colorado Sun picks up Jeremy's stuff, Jerry Healy, right? The nonprofit startup is called Colorado Sun. For those of you who didn't follow the story we chased on this, Colorado Sun was people that were so pissed off working at the Denver Post, right? They came over, started their own nonprofit operation, built it up, then they bought the weeklies surrounding Denver and turning this thing into a really nice operation. Is the Denver Post brand gone? Remember, it was Warren Buffett. We don't like him anymore. We used to like him because he's left the industry. But Warren used to say, and he was, amazing man. I never picked up a cigar butt unless it still could be brought, breathe life into it. Do you follow my logic? Are certain brands gone forever, or can they be revised? That's my question.
I think the worst damage you can do to your brand, and a lot of people probably aren't going to like this, the worst damage you can do to your brand is to start cutting back your print days, because people expect to see you in the community, and they expect at those size papers, even up to the Post, where they're expected to be doing investigative journalism into the community effort. So into the school boards, into the local governments, into the zoning board. And they're expected to be reporting and keeping all of us up to date on the activities of those people who we routinely do not trust. So I don't think that brand goes away. I love the competition aspect out there. And I believe the competition always does well. But for most all of the papers, just be back in your community, full bore. And that's where your salvation is going to come from.
I've only had E&P for 2 years. People said to me, the first thing they said when I took it over, are you going to kill the print product? I said, no. They said, oh, come on. That's your easy move. You'll because it wasn't profitable. It was losing 20 grand a month. When I got this thing from Duncan, and I kept thinking, no, that's my differentiator.
Yes.
No one's printing but me.
Yes.
I mean, to my industry, if you get my drift.
Well, that flows over to the papers, and you have to understand something. When you lose your print version, the barrier cost to the entry cost, right, into the market completely changes, and now you're on the same level as
every other blogger, every other two-bit person who's out there.
Exactly. I hate to use the pajamas in the basement, classic, but come on. Once you get to that point, your differentiation is gone.
It gives you street cred. There's no question if you're publishing something like that. And remember, when you publish, it's got to be good. You can't just you can fix a web page anytime.
Right.
But once you go to press, you're going to press. Okay, we're really running out, but I've just two more topics. One I want to ask you about is, what's this Section 230 thing? I saw you mentioning it in one of your.
Okay. So,
and you were going off nuts on this.
Yep. I think there's a couple things that have happened in the industry and in general with the internet that have hurt the newspapers, and that nobody saw it coming, and it should actually change. And one is Section 230 of the Decency Act, the Communications Decency Act or something. But what it does is it protects the social media platforms from any liability for comments or content that they happen to post. And same protection is not afforded to the newspapers. So they have to be, there's a reason why they vet things. There's a reason why they have attorneys to check stories, and especially on breaking and investigative stories. There's a reason why they exist. It's because they're not exempt from liability.
It's a section of Title 40. It's a section of Title 47 of the United States Code, and that as part of the United States Communications Decency Act. Okay, just wanted to throw that in. So basically, that's giving cover to the garbage that's out there. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. And I think it would fix a lot of things. In particular, for the newspapers, it would mean that a lot of the garbage competition would have to be very careful, because they would become on the same playing field in the context of liability. If anybody wants to read it, there's a great article on the Harvard Review from August 12th of this year, called "It's Time to Update Section 230." And I've never heard the folks in the industry talk about that much. And I think that's a big one, to be able to sort of bring the playing field back to level, because besides taking all of your content in the context of Google and social media, besides taking all your content, they also escape all liability.
Something, if you will send me the link to that article, I'll make sure we get it on the page.
Sure.
If you follow my logic, because in my opinion, that's something that we could start. Right now, finally, there is class action lawsuits, antitrust suits up against Google and Facebook.
There are.
But the problem you also have is Google and Facebook money is controlling so much right now of our associations that everybody's being very quiet. You understand?
They're deathly afraid. You're absolutely right. They're absolutely afraid to speak up against either of these two, because like Little Red Riding Hood, grandma sitting in the house with the nice bonnet on and having baked the fresh cake is offering them a little piece of pie before they're gobbled up. And that's probably going to just get me a ton of bad stuff right now. But the reality is that they've been doing this from the beginning. And, this goes all the way back to if you remember the Napster days on music, right?
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, people figure out how to give away music for free on the internet, and the industry has to start and change. And regrettably, the publishing industry, the first thing was they gave away everything for free, and the second thing was they never really came up with a model to address that, or an attack plan to address that. So
I hear you. I hear you. So let's get into the real question I want to ask you now, because we're running out of time. And this is something I got it because I saw it on LinkedIn about a year or two ago. You went to the Oval Office. Am I getting this straight? You were actually in the friggin' White House.
Oh Lord.
And you were in the Oval Office.
I didn't know if this would ever come back up again.
I'm sorry, I can't edit this out because I don't do editing. It's live and it's out there now.
All right, I'm gonna give you
toothpaste out the tube, genie out of the bottle.
I'm gonna give you the shortest possible version of a really interesting day.
Okay, go ahead.
So first of all, the story has to start with one of the things we do here, besides our advertising and editorial system, is we sell a product from a Norwegian company called Photoware. And the Photoware product is a digital asset management application. And really, we have, 100 or some Photoware customers, and 7 of them are newspapers. NBC Universal, Lubrizol, and then this organization called the White House Historical Association. And the White House Historical Association is a nonprofit organization that was started by Jackie Kennedy to protect the artifacts of the building and the office. Has nothing to do with the presidency. So every 2 years, they have a get-together. And 2 years ago or 3 years ago, that get-together was in D.C. And there was a private tour during the day of the White House, which I was incredibly pleased to be able to do. And then at night, they had a reception, and they had told us that it was likely that the president would be there for the reception. So we were all there, and I was up front, and the president came out. Actually, the first lady came out because she is the unofficial chair of the White House Historical Society. And she came out first and did a talk, and he came out right behind her. And then we had a tour of the White House, and at the end of it, the president announced, and this is President Trump, the president announced that the day before we had the opportunity to go see the model of the Oval Office in the Smithsonian. And some of us had gone over there, and he said, "How many of you went over to see it?" People raised their hand, and he said, "Well, I'm going to one up that." He said, "When we're done here, when you go down the hall, instead of turning left to go home, you're going to turn right, and everybody's going to get a chance to get a tour of the Oval Office in the White House." So forgetting any political affiliation, because it's not important, I was there to support the Historical Society.
And the White House is the White House, period.
And it's the White House, okay? The
White House.
You get a private tour of the White House, you're not going to throw that out the front window.
But I remember from the Post, and because I have I'm a historian. I love history. You saw the famous George Washington painting that Dolly Madison saved in the fire, correct? Did you saw the one she went back in to grab in a fire during? This is the British American War, correct?
I did.
And my word, that is like the most famous painting. That must be on the way to the Oval then, right? Because it's not out.
No, it's in one of it's either the East or West Great Room.
Oh, okay.
And I'm probably going to choke up here because I'm a history buff, especially a Revolution buff. And I was over there standing there watching that painting. And inside, the docents inside the White House and the tours are different branches of the military service.
Yeah.
And a Marine came over. And he looked at me and he said, "That's something, isn't it?" I said, "It's just amazing." I said, it's difficult to believe that we almost lost this and the White House."
It's the one with the sword, right? Because everybody knows
it. It's actually half finished. And he said, "Well, do you know what today is?" And I said, "No." He said, "It's the anniversary of the day that the British came in and burned the White House."
Yeah.
He said it was X number of years ago, and it was like some number, that they were in this room grabbing that painting, taking it down and out to a carriage out the back door. And I was choked up at that point. Because when you really get in there and when you can really get a private tour and see everything that's in there and all the history that's in there, and then to be able to actually, I walked in and I stood and I'm looking down at the carpet and looked up, and I was in the Oval Office, and I thought, "Oh, this isn't going to happen again in my life." But it was fantastic. And by the way, that's a fantastic organization, not political. that is
other people attended too, right? Because
there were about 200.
Yeah.
And
it's people who are descendants of those that are associated with the history of the White House, right? Or the history.
There were a number of great grandchildren from various presidents that were there. Interestingly, I looked at this guy and I thought, man, that's got to be a Taft. He just looked exactly like a Taft. And I walked over and looked and I talked to him, and he was like a great grandchild.
Not one of our best presidents. I mean, I could go.
Of the president who was in there. And there were a number of those that were there, and there were some really great seminars. And I would encourage anyone, no matter what your political affiliation, if you ever get the chance, tour the White House.
Of course.
Get a tour of the White House if you can, and visit the White House Historical Society, because they do a great job maintaining all of that, all of the artifacts. And by the way, the reason Jackie Kennedy found it is because previous presidents were taking things out of the White House.
Yeah, I know. She's the one that saved the building itself from becoming nothing more than a place where everybody took everything home with them.
Absolutely.
And she started the White House Foundation. But I think one of the things, if I'm going to close on this, if I can put in my 2 cents about history, is people don't really understand who George Washington really was. They think of him as, the head of the, he did keep he wasn't as much he was a military genius in the war before. He kept the army together is what he really did, until the French could finally come in during the Revolution, really want to study the Revolutionary War. But what he did do was he had this amazing ability to understand that there should be no king, that he was the most modest of all men. He believed in a constitutional society. And every time someone wanted to make him king or emperor, or give him too much power, he backed off.
Walked away from it.
He walked away from a third term.
Yep.
And that's what's so amazing about our society, to have our father of our country. People think, well, he was a great warrior. He was a great leader of men.
Yeah, very much so.
He only won a couple battles. If you think about it, Princeton and others. I mean, what he did was he kept the army whole so we could survive. And that's what is so amazing about. So when you study Washington, because I don't think we'd have this democracy. I mean, it's just so
right.
I mean, come on. We are the only country in the world, I believe, that lives on a document. We don't pledge to a country. We pledge to a document.
And Mike, speaking of some history, when we a year ago we moved from our old building over to here to a different location about 8 miles away, and I love to tell people that we moved from Nazareth to Bethlehem is what we did. But when we moved over, when we moved over, I set aside a little part of the building and a few shelves to have an SCS museum. And I just want to show you some things real quick. This is a Tandy.
I sold that. Okay.
Tandy,
for those of you on Spotify,
portable computer. Okay.
He's holding up a Tandy ASCII keyboard computer that I used to sell at Radio Shack. That actually was more advanced than the TRS one, the TRS that we used to have the cassette storage. Remember those?
We used this for our first ad tracking system. and here is a board from I think it's 83. I think the year is 83. Yeah, 1983. One of the first Macintosh boards. That's here.
Amazing.
Oh, there we go.
He's holding up an original Mac board. I have every computer I've ever owned, and I do have my Toshiba laptop with the floppy drives on the side that I carry around. Right. That's what got me the gig at my first newspaper, because no one knew what it was. What is that thing you're holding? What is that?
Modem. 33.6 modem.
Remember those?
Our younger guys here have no clue what this did and what was going on.
When I first went around peddling the internet, I used to carry a little phone with me so I could find a dial tone. And there were so many, because I had to dial in from different places when I was moving around. And I remember find a dial tone, then you dialed in. It was an honor, Kurt. Look, if anyone wants to get a hold of you at SCS, what's your email address, sir?
My email is kurt@newspapersystems.com. Or you can just call anytime if you want, and we're all over the web, so you can grab that if you want as well.
And I think this was great to have a nice, uplifting, fun dialogue around the holiday season. Thank you for positiveness.
I see a lot of good stuff going on, of people who want to make sure it lasts. and that they continue to serve their obligation to the First Amendment, which is what it's all about.
We are part of the democratic society. Without a free and unfettered press, it doesn't exist. And that's something we all know. Thanks
Mike,
again.
thank you.
My honor, sir. We had a blast. And thank you very much.
Great.
Stay healthy and well. The industry needs you.
You too. Thank you.